So this article was just in Saturday morning, and this is by a Christopher Wilson. He's a senior writer for Yahoo. So books on race, gender, pulled from schools amid conservative push against radical literature. I just want to stop for a moment and give some of my feedback, and probably throughout the article I will read this. But recently there has been a group um, of parents, and they put together a group, and what they've been doing is banning a lot of the books in schools. And a lot of the books that are being pulled, most of them are black authored books. And Toni Morrison, they really been hitting those books pretty hard by pulling those. I've also read where they were considering pulling Martin Luther King books about Martin Luther King. I believe there might be some books about the Holocaust. Um, any books having to do with racial issues and social issues that surround race, those books seem to be the ones that are targeted more often than any other books. So, as this article goes, it says books on race, gender pulled from schools amid conservative push against radical is what they call it, literature. And so this is a conservative group that's been doing this, and they've been targeting most of the books. And a lot of this has come into effect because of the controversy around CRT, which is critical race theory, which critical race theory is not taught. From what I've learned, it wasn't originally taught in elementary schools. It's not taught until it's in the college level coursework. However, you have a group that has been targeting the books in libraries of elementary schools because of the social issues that we've been having recently, all the issues surrounding race topics. And so this article starts with attempts by conservative activists to regulate how schools discuss race, sexuality, and gender have contributed to an ongoing effort to remove books seen as controversial to the school's curricula and libraries. So most of the recent high-profile examples was Art Spiegelman's award-winning Moss, a graphic novel that depicts the horrors of the Holocaust, being removed from a Tennessee 8th grade language arts curriculum. So the McMinn County School Board voted 10-0 to remove Spiegelman's book on January 10th. But the story began to circulate Wednesday after a report from the Tennessee Holler. So according to the minutes from the meeting, the use of curse words and nakedness were the impetus for the change. So just having those words or those phrases in there was cause for pulling the book. So I understand that on TV and maybe at home the kids hear worse, but we are talking about things that if a student went down the hallway and said this, or disciplinary policies says that they can be disciplined, and rightfully so. A board member, Tony Allman, says this, and so we are teaching this and going against the policy. So the school board issued a statement on Wednesday saying the decision was not about ignoring the Holocaust, but about finding options that were more age appropriate in their content, concluding. So we simply do not believe that this work is an appropriate text for our students to study. We're living in 2022, where the internet is accessible to almost everyone, teenagers and children included. And most times, internet has more information in it than any library would. And so these children, if they're not able to access these books, they will find other ways to access information. It may be information that's a lot more, um, let's say, hard hitting, or a lot more in your face than any book would have it. Books are actually in the library of these schools because they were serving as teachable tools about a past or a history of racial violence or racial tensions that happened prior. And it was supposed to teach in a way where at least kids that were curious about the history to not repeat the past. However, they've been pulling these books, they as in these groups that are against CRT, which is critical race theory, been pulling these books because they're a conservative group. And so there's been a lot of negative feedback about CRT from particular groups that have have an alliance where they want to pull these books from the library bookshelves in their school districts. And so this is not every school district. This is specific school districts that have more of a conservative backing most times, and or they have other issues that surround the talks on race relations. And so the argument for that whole thing is that a lot of times these people come from maybe other groups outside of these conservative groups that claim that they're trying to rid their libraries and their schools of books that have topics that they feel are not age appropriate, but a lot of times they have other agendas in mind, is to not teach their kids about the histories and the past troubles that we've had with race relations. And so it fosters more ignorance because kids are unaware or they don't have any exposure to people of color or people from other backgrounds and people's experiences from the past and why people are being treated the way they are. As we see what's going on now, there's a lot of inequality that has happened where you have groups of people who they're able to acquire home ownership or they're able to acquire certain um, stability that another family finds it almost next to or if not impossible to acquire. So the article goes on to read that Spiegelman said that he felt the board's action was daftly myopic, okay, but having read the transcript, didn't believe the decision was rooted in anti-Semitism. Okay, so I've met so many young people who have learned things from my book, Spiegelman told CNBC, adding that he understood that something very, very haywire was going on in Tennessee. And so you'll find too that most of these groups are centralized in southern states or they're in states that are primarily conservative. And a lot of them have had supported Trump in 2020, and when Trump did not win the election, there is a lot of people that who were in support of him were rubbed the wrong way. And so a lot of times people look at this as another way of trying to get back at people they feel are democratic or on the left. So that they feel that this might be also not only a racial thing, but also a political fight as well. So the Tennessee decision followed news of the Missouri School Board voting 4-3 to ban The Bluest Eye. It's a novel or a Nobel laureate Toni Morrison book, which depicts the struggles of a young black girl dealing with racism. So, due to its passages reference incest and child rape, the book is irregular on the American Library Association's annual list of most. And so, if you look at some of the books already that they are trying to pull right here, you'll see it. And so, and if they hadn't already done it, and so it was almost removed from circulation in Kansas in November, along with The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood and Fences by Pulitzer Prize winning play by August Wilson. Both Morrison and Wilson were black. Okay. And so, by all means, go buy the book for the child, said school board member Sandy Garber. And Wettsville, Missouri. But I would not want this book in the school for anyone else to see. So this is their position on those particular literature books. And so a lot of talk has also been said that most of the authors happen to be people of color. Which is not a coincidence. So Deborah Caldwell Stone, director of the American Library Association Office for Intellectual Freedom, told Yahoo News that in her 2 decades with the organization, she has not seen this many challenges. The ALA's term for request to remove books. Okay, so according to the ALA, raw preliminary data, Caldwell Stone said the office typically receives 350 challenges reported to their office per year, including 373 in 2019 and last full pre-pandemic school year. So as a comparison, the group had 330 challenges reported in the 3 months from September the 1st to December the 1st of 2022. So you have these. They call themselves parents' rights organizations. So this is the groups that I'm referring to earlier that I mentioned they in the groups. They call themselves parents' rights organization pursuing this censorship agenda and arguing that censorship is the proper solution. But once you start using book banning as a tool, where does it end? Caldwell Stone said. So you end up with work like Moz being on the chopping block. So what comes next? Okay. And so pages from the graphic novel Moz, American cartoonist Art Spiegel are pictured in an illustration in Pasadena, California. And so this is pretty much the illustration here. So we're seeing a number of organizations encouraging local chapters and members to bring challenges to raise them at school board meetings and library meetings. So some of the phenomenon is tied to that. She continued. So social media has also made it very easy to amplify a complaint about a particular book and have it go viral and have an individual parent or even a local chapter of parents' rights groups show up at the next board meeting and complain about the particular book. So conservative activists and donors began a coordinated effort to win seats on school boards last summer, stoking the furor of critical race theory. So this is where it comes into that whole topic. An academic study of racism's systemic impact. So teachers groups and schools tend to argue that CRT is not taught below the university level. Okay. The Republican-controlled states passing laws aimed at preventing the teaching of critical race theory. It is sometimes now easier for groups of parents to target specific texts. So according to tracking by PEN America, 71 gag order bills have been introduced this month, and that would limit topics that can be taught in schools. So this is the groups that you're seeing that are trying to fight against And then you have groups that are fighting for, so it's both a mix in there. So, angry community members of parents in Ashburn, Virginia, I believe, in June last year, seeing this a Star Spangled Banner after a Loudoun County School Board meeting was halted because the crowd refused to quiet down. Okay, and so you have parents who are for the books to stay and parents who are against the books to stay, are against it. And so education was a key issue in the Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin. Youngkins. Okay, I may not have pronounced that correctly, but successful campaign. So it's young Glenn Youngkins for governor in Virginia last year. So Youngkin, he ran an ad in late October in which a mother stated that the Democratic candidate Terry McAuliffe, who had previously served as a governor, didn't think parents should have a say in whether or not their children were exposed to explicit material. So the ad does not mention that the book in question is another Morrison title, Beloved, and that the son of the mother quoted was in advanced placement English class at the time. And so, with the issue at the forefront in the state in the following month, the two school board members in Virginia County said they wanted books with sexually explicit language in them to be burned. So, the movement to remove books from libraries and schools is organized by groups like these are the groups by title: Moms for Liberty, which has pushed to remove about works about Martin Luther King Jr. from the curricula and has ties to prominent Republicans like Florida Governor DeSantis. So another organization involved is No Left Turn in Education, which has dozens of books listed on its website that it claims spread radical and racist ideology to students. They demean our nation and its heroes, revise our history, and divide us as a people for the purpose of indoctrinating kids to a dangerous ideology. And so the books listed are predominantly written by non-white authors. And on the same page, other groups includes books that discuss LGBTQ themes, features LGBTQ characters. Titles on the list include Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give, which was also on Netflix. Beloved, I believe, was on Netflix, possibly. And Sarah Hoffman's Jacob's New Dress. And so this is what we're seeing going on. Republican gubernatorial candidate Glenn Youngkin, he's left. That you see in his wife Susan is second. And so from the left, they greet supporters during a rally in Chesterfield, Virginia in November. And so this is where a lot of this, and just kind of take a look at the crowd. You get an idea of what's kind of going on there. So some of this has been organized around, frankly, a very cynical campaign to vilify materials dealing with racism in the U.S. and the experiences of Black Americans, particularly their experience with police violence and systemic racism, under the rubric of critical race theory, Caldwell Stone said. So we're also seeing organizations who believe that young people should not have access to information about gender and sexuality as well. So in at least one instance, expansive books lists have become state policy. So last month, a school district in San Antonio, Texas, our area, pulled more than 400 books from its shelves to review them out of an abundance of caution after Republican state legislator published a list of 850 books he wanted reviewed. So the state representative Matt Cross, who chairs House Committee, the House Committee on General Investigating, and it's running for state attorney general, told Texas Education Agency in October that he was initiating an inquiry into Texas school district content and provided a 16-page list of books. So in October, a letter cited concerns over any books that contain material that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race or sex, or convey that a student, by virtue of their race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, and oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. So take a look at who's spearheading this. And so supporters gather. So this is what you see right here. And so actually this sounds more like the people that you see down here that are running this. This seems more like their issue. It's not the kids' issue, because the kids are not really the ones that are aware of what's going on unless these people tell them these things. And so they're learning about something that happened in the past. They're not feeling any guilt because they are not the ones that actually have done anything. But these people, somehow, maybe they are benefiting from a past, or they've known people who have done some horrible things and they feel a level of guilt. That's what I'm believing is going on, or they feel some type of way, or they feel these feelings we have here, the guilt, the anguish. Maybe they feel some kind of distress. There's change going on. A lot of people don't like change, that have been from a generation where it was okay to segregate. It was okay to have schools where you only had schools that only had people that had, you know, white children in it, and no black children could attend. Maybe they were used to seeing that, or maybe they're used to living the segregated life. They're used to being in a community where there are no black families, or black families are not looked at as important. It's more who they've been used or comfortable being around. Maybe not talking about what has happened and just feeling like everything has been earned when there's a history behind it. And a lot of times people don't wanna hear the truth because it hurts. And maybe they know or they saw something horrible and that was traumatic, but in their mind they think that was the way to get ahead in life. Our parents, our great 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 grandparents, if they didn't do these horrible things, then we wouldn't have the privileges that we do now. So why speak on them? Why work against what we're enjoying? It's taking away from what we have, what we're benefiting from. And so, yes, I said this, and so that is my input on that issue. And I believe that this is a hate campaign, like a hit squad, to get rid of books that have anything to do with racial history in the past. So the supporters, they claim they gather for a rally promoted in Michigan, a conservative coalition, and in opposition to the President Biden in the Brandon Township village of Ortonville, Michigan. This was in November. So in December, a new Texas law went into effect intended to combat CRT, which is critical race theory. It stipulates that a teacher may not be compelled to discuss a widely debated and currently controversial issue of public policy or social affairs, and that if it is discussed, the educator must explore the topic objectively and in a manner free from political bias. So one school administrator told staff members that under the new law, they should be prepared to teach an opposing view of the Holocaust in order not to violate the new law. And so a comment that led to an apology from the school district superintendent. And so, you hear that? So they should be prepared to teach an opposing view of the Holocaust. So they're not only going against people that are African American or black, they're also going against Jewish history as well. Any history that it has nothing to do with, or has nothing to do with what they would refer to as a particular history of patriotism. You notice how they're wearing their clothes. Anything having to do with the history of the past, having to do with racial tensions or violence that has happened towards people who are not white, they don't want any books or any reference of that in libraries. They basically don't want kids to know about what happened. So Caldwell Stone said that the people taking an interest in local school and library boards, including showing up to these meetings and voting in elections, can help push back on censorship, as some students and parents are already doing. So she said that the group has argued very forcefully for wider communities to have a say on the targeted books, that the work is evaluated as a whole and not focused on one image or a few words, so that when you evaluate a work educational suitably, or it works educational suitably, that you're looking at the broader picture. So in addition to this, she said that there should be a mechanism in place for those parents who do have concerns about the literature for whatever reason to opt their young student out of that particular reading assignment. And so I feel like this is an extra level of going the extra mile to do this, and I feel like it's an effort to hurt people of color and people that are Jewish, to hurt them. They're going the extra mile to show you, and people that are in LGBTQ communities as well, to hurt people's history, to make it more clear that your history is insignificant and not important, and what happened before was not important and is irrelevant to what's going on now. And you need to focus more on white history. You need to focus more on white people and more on patriotism and more on Trumpism and more on, the Anglo groups that come forward and speak out against people of color, or books that were authored by people of color. And so this is what goes on, and this seems like it's calculated. And so it's escalated since the 2020 that election, and since the election of Biden. And so when he was elected, and then there was all this argument about the voting being stolen, the election being stolen, and that Biden shouldn't have won. That's where a lot of this is coming from as well, too. I do truly believe. And so you have these people from these groups that are starting to make themselves vocal at school board meetings, and I wouldn't be surprised, are coming around to your school district. And so we need parents to stand up that are on the opposing side and speak out against this hit squad, this witch hunt for people that basically want to censor what has actually happened, and what has not happened just in the past, what is happening right now, what is happening to people, what is happening in our world right now. Most of your people are being evicted, and a lot of people that are dealing with inequalities tend to be people that are either, if it's not a class issue, it's a race issue, most definitely, having to do with not having a lot of income, or they're from a particular group, racial background, tend to be the ones that are most evicted, tend to be the ones that are impacted by this pandemic a lot more, um, in terms of uh, getting sick in a way where they're exposed. They're working jobs where they can be exposed more. Um, I feel like the only way that these other groups are exposed is they have this belief that the virus isn't real, or that it's made up by the left. They even had Trump, he was against Fauci. He had other people against the doctor and his wishes, and he even tried to get other people that weren't qualified to be doctors to basically tell people information that wasn't correct. It was misinformation, and has birthed a lot of misinformation on social media, where now we have this thing, these viruses that have produced mutant variants that have gotten really out of control now to where we are today. And so we still have people that are fighting against Fauci. We have people that are fighting against sound advice, people that have divided based on masks, based on um, vaccines, based on beliefs, religious leaders they've tried to use to try to create division, to try to exempt themselves from getting vaccinated so they could go to places of employment. It's been a lot of things that have happened. Recently, I learned of some schools here in Los Angeles, in LAUSD, or LA County, where kids are getting sick because the push was, and where I really do believe this came in at, is Republicans were pushing for schools to be opened. However, that has been, I feel, a disaster, because more kids are now being hospitalized than there ever was. By them opening the schools up, we have more kids that are coming down with this Omicron variant, more kids that are sick, kids are dying. We have some deaths in Florida that have exploded out there. Although they want to push this, say that Omicron is mild, when it isn't mild, anywhere near mild, because what we've been seeing is more multiple evictions, or what would have been evictions. They had to go back and change the mask, make the mask thicker. Now they're requesting in these schools that even the teachers and the students wear I believe it's K 95 KN95 mask. If I said it correctly, they're thicker masks. It's a lot harder to breathe out of those for some people. And so you have to like work under those conditions. The virus of Omicron is spreaded so rapidly, and this new variant that I've heard is spreading even more faster. It's more contagious. They have yet to determine how serious this one is going to be. Whether it's something more serious than Omicron, could be more of a deadlier version of it. And so I feel that a lot of this came out of the aggressive move from Republicans and Republican states pressing, the issue towards CDC to reopen, and governors to reopen businesses, because they were concerned about the economy. And so, yes, that's a concern, but also the safety of people is a concern. So now the sacrifice that was made has risked children being in the hospital, and that's what we're seeing a lot of. Even their children in the hospital, because you have the same group that is saying that they don't like masks. You have a parent, I don't know if he's a parent or not, I'm assuming so, where I've been seeing on the news the guy heckling children from a school, threatening them, saying that they should take off their masks. And the parents are concerned about this. He comes up to the school and he threatens the parents and he threatens the kids that he's going to do X, Y, and Z, or he makes them feel threatened, that is. A lot of civil abuses are going on. So I believe that we are now looking at what is called a civil war. And so this is part of it, by the books on race and gender being pulled from schools amid of this conservative push. So what they claim is radical literature. Now, what if you had the groups that they're pulling these books from turn around and do their own movement and pull all of their books out of their libraries that are radical? I'm sure you can find things in there about patriotism that is bloody and violence and has gore in it and makes reference of killings. Because isn't patriotism going to talk about the war? I'm sure it's going to have things in there that make reference about, it has to mention slavery somewhere and how the people were treated and how they had to enlist in the service. Well, how did some of those men join the service? Why were they joining the service? Why were they drafted? You know, so I'm sure there were language in some of the books and literature books that they've written. These people have written that have controversial phrases in it. We are living in a world where there's internet and almost everything your child can access. If they can get on TikTok or YouTube, they're gonna find things. Even if you pull millions of books, they can find the same thing online. You can't monitor their whole life. And so, in fact, when you do this, that builds more curiosity, and what they probably wouldn't even maybe thought twice about reading, now they're compelled to read it because you made a big stink about pulling it. So I think it's going to backfire. It's just like kids, when you tell kids don't listen to that album or don't listen to that music. What do kids do? Listen to that music and listen to that album. When you tell them don't watch that movie or that's mommy and daddy's movie, what do kids do? Sneak the movie and look at it. Don't read those books. Why did these groups ban all of these books? And then when they read, it had to do with race and sex. Just the word sex, kids are going to look at it. So I think this is not really going to be as effective as they think it's going to be. If you're hiding something, it must be worth looking at.